The company that made Wegovy and Ozempic made $2.2 trillion. Here's what they didn't tell you.
I got sent this video 3 times, so let's talk about it. First and foremost, nothing she says in the video is new information. It's all been out for a while, and if you've been following these medications for any period of time, you'd already know that. So none of this should be shocking. If it's shocking to you and you've been using this medication, do your research. The first time they realized that the venom from the Gila monster could actually work in this way to mimic GLP-1 or get your cells to release GLP-1, the L cells in the gut to release GLP-1, was in 1992. Lot Knudsen was the guy who, or I'm sorry, John Ing discovered it. And the reason they looked at that one specifically is because previous trials before that, even doing gene cloning, the response of the GLP-1 was very short. It was minutes instead of hours, and the Gila monster venom works for hours. In 1992, they started using that in human clinical trials. In 1995, they started bioengineering a long-acting GLP-1 analog at Novo Nordisk, and that drug was released onto the market in limited quantities for diabetics only in 1997. It was then pulled from the market and reintroduced with a new name in 2005. I think it would probably surprise you to know that the original understanding of what GLP-1s did was discovered back in 1902. So they had a better understanding of the human gut in 1902 than we do right now. The first time that a GLP-1 was approved for chronic weight management was in 2014, and it was said Saxenda, which is liraglutide. The first oral GLP-1 got approved in 2019, and it was Ribelsus. And then once weekly semaglutide for chronic weight management was Wegovy in 2021. In 2022, the first GIP GLP in tirzepatide or Mounjaro came out. And in 2023, tirzepatide was approved for chronic weight management, and so was Zepbound. There are a lot of things that she covers in this video. And I think one of them that we're talking about that people are like, oh, I would never take that because it's from the Gila monster and it's toxic. There are a lot of times where people do low dose exposure to something to build up a tolerance to it, including snake venom from other types of snakes. And so that we're concerned that this has the same potential of lethality of the Western rattlesnake, I think is overreaching. Now, the things to be worried about, right, it slows gastric emptying, which means your food does sit in the stomach for longer. And we know that you should have a bowel movement every day, but that bowel movement should be well formed. And we even have something to reference called the Bristol stool chart. And if you aren't having a normal bowel movement according to the Bristol stool chart every day, if not twice a day, then Houston, we have a problem, and there's some GI distress probably happening. The paralyzation, and for some permanent paralyzation of the small intestine and stomach, and the sphincter that opens from the stomach into the small intestine and from the small intestine into the large intestine, that's a bigger issue and a bigger problem, right? Because it means that you're going to lack nutrients. One of the nutrient deficiencies that is showing up a lot in this area is a copper deficiency, believe it or not. And copper becomes important for managing your iron and for managing your ability to carry oxygen in your blood. And just like any medication on the market, there are going to be people who have extreme side effects, and there are going to be people who have no side effects. That's the way it works. That's the way pharmacology works. In most trials, the drug only has to be effective for about 30 to 40% of people, and it just has to not off anybody. So that's like the standard for it to get FDA approval in most cases. And I mean, that's putting it very this is the basics. But that's the majority. One of the major concerns that I have had is that when you dig into the research, the reason they first started studying these medications for weight loss is because they were causing weight loss at a fifth of the dose, at a quarter of the dose, at a tenth of the dose, at half the dose that they are being given specifically for weight loss. And the quote shortage, where you couldn't get the lowest dose, but you could get the next dose, like the dose that you were supposed to not have until you were 3 months in, I think created more side effects than we needed to deal with, period. And I think it's still creating more side effects than we need to deal with, period. Because again, if we noticed that people were losing weight at 1/5 the dose or half the dose, why did the weight loss dose need to be so high? And yes, there are lawsuits. There are some big lawsuits that they're all individual lawsuits, and one court has been assigned to like deal with them all. Because people are saying that the side effects weren't reported. No, the side effects were reported. You have no claim. I'm sorry, you have no claim. If you are going to say that you didn't understand that gastroparesis was a side effect, when everyone was talking about slowing of digestion and emptying of the digestive tract, you chose to be ignorant. That's on you, not on the drug company and not on the physician who referred it. Sorry, that's you for not paying attention. If you were not paying attention when people said that when you come off the medication, you're more likely to regain the weight 3 times as fast and gain back weight that you didn't have in the first place, again, that's on you. I have said this a million times. Yes, these are medications because they cause a hormone in your body to then be released. More than one, actually, but let's stick to this. You cannot out-medicate or out-supplement your lifestyle. So if you are not willing to make the lifestyle changes to go along with the medication that you've then been prescribed because you can't do it any other way, you should not be prescribed the medication, period. And you definitely shouldn't be getting it gray market. One of the side effects that no one hardly ever talks about with a lot of these medications, not just with Retta, but a lot of these medications, is that they actually cause heartbeats to speed up by around 10 beats per minute in healthy individuals. So what are they doing in people who aren't healthy or people who are unaware that they have a heart condition? They are causing AFib in some people, and they are causing some worse symptoms that are cardiac. So while they are designed now, approved for heart disease, they aren't going to help every heart disease patient, and they could harm some of them. A lot of people talk about the lack of motivation to do anything in the severe depression that they go into, particularly when they're taking gray market Retta, because everything on the market right now that says retatrutide is gray market. I'm sorry, it's not been FDA approved. You don't have a real doctor prescribing it. You have somebody buying it gray market and selling it to you at a markup. That's what it is. Let's call it what it is. So everyone taking that has suffered with anxiety or depression in the past, it has amplified that to the point where they have had negative thoughts of self-harm. These are not things you should be taking without medical supervision, and these are not things you should be taking without making the lifestyle changes. So if you're not going to start a weightlifting routine where you're in the gym doing resistance training 3 days a week, if you're over the age of 30, period, end of story, you shouldn't be taking these. Because if you start losing your muscle mass, it becomes harder to rebuild it because you're in too much of a calorie deficit. When you're in too much of a calorie deficit, you can't build muscle, you go anabolic and you start consuming your own body when you try and build something. And your muscle mass is your long-term solution for insulin resistance. Period. It's your 401k for your long-term health. Period. If you are not going to change your nutrition plan and you're not going to eat the way that you need to eat in order to get your body to start producing these on your own, you shouldn't be prescribed these medications. If someone's not checking in with you weekly, looking at your nutrition that you intook that week, you don't belong on these medications because you're probably not doing it right, and you're probably going to be the person who regains the weight, and you're probably the person who's going to switch to gray market because you can't get a doctor to keep prescribing it or your insurance doesn't cover it anymore. Follow for part 2.